Alright, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to go through how to create wings for your creature. So the type of wings I'm going to create are similar to like a bat wing or like a dragon. So for this creature here, so let's start off by creating a starting point. So I'm going to use the append function here to append a plane. So the plane is one-sided, so if you made it from this side, it looks like nothing happened. You just need to rotate and you can see that there is a plane there. So we're going to make one side of the wing first, and then we can duplicate it and mirror it over to the other side. So for this, I'm going to turn off symmetry. So you can press that on the keyboard. And for now, what I want to do is take a look at the wireframes. So I'm going to press Shift F to bring up the wireframes. And I'm going to make sure that I have my plane selected. Now it's quite a dense mesh, and it's best if we take this down all the way to basically nothing. So what I'm going to do is go to geometry, and I'm just going to zero mesh this and put it to half and just keep going until it can't go anymore. So we'll get to a point where it just can't go any lower. So it looks like this is it here. And then I'm just going to delete the remaining edges. So ZBrush does have a way to manipulate individual points and edges. It's not ideal, in my opinion, that we go into this function too much because it is quite odd. And that's saying something, given it I'm talking about ZBrush. But the tool that I'm looking for is called ZModeler. So it's actually a brush. So it's B on the keyboard, Z for ZModeler, and M. And it's this one here, so BZM. And I find this best if we use the smallest brush size. Now, how this tool works is that it's contextual based on what you have highlighted. So right now I can highlight a polygon face and it will give me a menu that's associated with that polygon face. I can highlight an edge and it'll give me a menu that's associated with that and a vertex. So what I want to do is get rid of all these edges. So I need to highlight on this edge, press spacebar, and it'll bring up a menu on edge actions. So I want to delete entire edge loop. So just come into here and click on all of these edge loops and then just remove them. So we're just left with a single polygon face. Great. Now what I'm going to do is just rotate this plane so it's on the other side. So I'm just going to press W on the keyboard, hold down Shift, and then just flip that to the other side. So negative 180. Okay. So we're going to scale this down so it's a bit more easier to select. I'm just going to move this over to the left side because we're going to start off with the left side. And basically we're just going to be moving these vertices in place, and then we're going to add resolution when we need it. So I find it best to just do this with the move tool. So just bring up your move brush, so BMV, and then just move these polygons or these vertices into place. Now I'm going to increase my intensity to 100% because I really just want to move this into place, just like that. And this one here, I think it will be best if we move that to this section. Right. And let's move this over here for now. Like that. If you need to use a smaller brush, then you can do that. So it's sort of getting hidden. So what we need to do is turn on transparent, and we can see through to the other side. Now I'm going to bring this one over to the body, and I'm going to make sure I'm in orthographic view. I'm just going to bring that over like that. It's going to look a little bit weird because it's so low poly, and it's going to kind of look like it doesn't make sense. Now I want to snap this vertex onto this edge here, but because it's one-sided, we can't see what we're doing. So at the very bottom of the tools panel, there's a display properties. So we can enable double-sided, and then we can see the other side. Okay. So on the top view, might be easy. I'm just going to push that right there. Okay, so it's going to look a little bit weird, I understand, but it will start to make sense real soon. So I think this polygon here would probably be best right over here. Okay, so we have our initial placement of these vertices. I'm going to turn transparency off for now. And what we need to do is just increase the resolution. So I'm going to grab this guy and put it in place as close as I can, like that. And that looks pretty good. So we need to increase the resolution, but we're not going to subdivide it as usual. What we're going to do is use the Z modeler to add some extra details here. So I'm going to work, I'm going to do the top, so the vertical lines first, and then we can work on the horizontal lines. So let's press BZM for Z modeler. And I'll isolate this just for now. So we can put some lines here to allow us to edit this surface a bit. So I'm going to hover over the edge, press spacebar, and I want to insert an edge loop complete. So I can add this, whoops, so not inset, insert, single edge loop. So we'll just do this one at a time. So let's just add one here. Let's go back to our other view by clicking solo. And now that we have this extra line here, I'm just going to press BMV again to go back to my move tool. And I'm going to move this into place. Right, so this one here is going to be linking up to this part. So really at this point, we're kind of just doing some basic modeling. Of course, you can do this initial part inside Maya or Max or whatever you use. But, you know, we kind of do eventually need to know a little bit of Z modeler. So this might be a good chance to learn it. So let's go back to Z modeler, BZM. And then because we already have that command set, we can just click onto the surface and then we can get that extra edge loop. So let's go to BMV and then we'll move this into place. So this one will be to this bone here. And this one here, I think what would be best is that we actually move this one over a little bit for now. And then we can just move this one over. So I want it to sort of be in line with this bone here. This one here is a bit of an outlier because we could do something like that. But you know what? Actually, let's do that. That looks better. Now we'll make the topology flow a lot nicer. So let's bring this back. So this one here needs to be pushed back a bit. Okay, so let's solo this and see if there's any changes that we need to make, and that looks pretty good to me. So let's go out of solo and let's use transparency. So we can just make some finer adjustments here. Okay. And then let's go back to our Z modeler. So that's BZM, and then we can add another one. And this one here, if we go back to our move tool, will be for this bone. So let's bring this back and over like this. And then the polygon up here, it's more or less in the right position already. We just need to maybe give it a slight nudge. Great, so we can do something like that. Okay, so we got our initial wing shape. So we've got these sort of, vertical lines in. Now we need to get the horizontal lines. And we're more or less doing the same thing. So we go B, Z, M, and then we can add a line here. Now I'm going to line these points up with these bones. So I'm going to make one more for this part, and then maybe one more for the end part. So let's press B, M, V. And then let's do this one at a time. So it'll be this one here. We'll drag up. Then we'll go to the back view. And then we'll line that up. Now this one here will be over to this one. So I'm using the views to snap to the front and back, or the side and back, sorry. So I can make sure that vertice is in the right spot. And then I'll do the same thing to this one here. So let's move that over. And then in the side view, I can move that back. So it gets a little tricky sometimes when there's a bit more polygons to deal with. So sometimes going on a slight angle, then moving it out can be a bit easier to position. And then this last one, maybe we'll just move this one out for now. And then we can just push it back in. So we can use a bigger brush to grab that. And this one here, just move that over. I think I want to move this one a little bit back, sort of over on its back like that. We can fine tune that later. So we're going to add one more, maybe two more. We'll see how we go. So let's B, Z, M. And then we can just click here. Remember, we have the command already loaded in. So we can just add that just by clicking on that edge. And let's go back to our move tool. And then we can move this shape, this polygon into place. So this one will go here. Let's go to the back view. We'll move that over. Okay. And then we've got one more here. So something like that. And then this one, we'll just move over a little bit. Do want it sort of on its back. So I'll do something like that. So that looks pretty good. I think it's worth adding one more just to even out this shape a bit. So let's do that one more time. Let's press B, Z, M. Let's click on this edge to add another one because there is a bone here. And then we're just going to go back to our move tool and then move this over like that. This one will be fairly easy because they're quite close together. And then we'll probably even that out a little bit, spread it out slightly. Same with these ones here. So let's do a double check over the mesh. Looks like this guy's coming out a little bit, so let's just pop him back in. And this could be adjusted a little bit. Okay, so let's go out of symmetry, not symmetry, transparency. And that looks pretty good. So just double check that everything's in the right spot. There's no sort of weird sort of areas going on. Like up here, we could move this up a bit if we wanted to. So it's not sort of covering this bone here. Move that back. Move that over like that. Okay. All right, so that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So what we need to do is we need to give it some extra resolution because right now it's really low res. And we can just subdivide it, although we do run into some issues at this point. So if I go to geometry and I subdivide it, you can see that it kind of loses its shape, which is not ideal. We do want it to sort of be in place. So we can try turning off the smooth modifier. So when we subdivide anything, it subdivides, but it also smooths things out. So we can try turning that off. You can see if I toggle my my wireframe by pressing Shift F, it updates. So this will give us a nice look, or a nice sort of subdivision, but it gives us a faceted look. So we do need to go in here and smooth this out. But what we can do is we can easily smooth it out using one of the dynamic features. So I'm going to subdivide maybe, I think for now that might be, let's go one more time. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we got a nice subdivision. We could spend the time here to smooth it out like this. That, you know, looks pretty good, to be honest. There's nothing really wrong with that, but we could try to use the dynamic features inside ZBrush to give this a real sort of, you know, organic look. What I'm going to do is just go to our move brush and just move this down a little bit. I don't like the way that looks. Okay, so what we can do is sort of mask areas out and then run our dynamics to give it a more interesting look. So the parts that I want to mask out are basically the parts that are being grabbed by this sort of bone here. So I can hold down Control and mask this area out. And it might not be high enough resolution. We'll see. We'll see how we go. But I want to grab this as best as I can. So anywhere where it's sort of attached to the body, we want to mask out. Something like this. Okay. So hopefully that will be okay. What we can do is press Control and tap to sort of smooth that mask out. But because we're quite low res, it might end up just sort of disappearing. So what I'm going to do is just leave it. We might need to subdivide a couple more times to increase the resolution. But you know, with that being said, we can open up the Dynamics panel here and drag that over to the right. So it's sort of, you know, docked in there so we can look at. We don't need, we can try running gravity if we wanted to. We don't need any sort of collision, but let's just run it and see how it looks. So you can see it's sort of drooping down and it's not giving us the look that we want. And this part here is just falling down. So we do probably need to increase the resolution, right? Because it's not holding as our mask. As we mask here, it's not holding this shape. So let's just divide a couple more times. So it's not liking the fact that we have this masked out. So I'm just going to clear the mask by dragging a box in the open space whilst holding down Control. So let's divide a couple more times and I want to see what the wireframe looks like. So that looks better. So you can see how it's much more sharper. Just for this video, let's just do it one more time. Okay, so let's go back and let's mask off this area here. So I'm holding down Control and I'm masking off these points here. Being quite rough with it, and I'm not sort of taking too much precautions with this. Just want to grab these areas like that. Okay, so with that, I might grab a little bit more here and here. So we can blow the mask out just by holding down Control and tapping the more dense your mesh is, the sort of least effective that is. We can go to masking, and then there's a blur mask. We can also shrink the mask as well. So there's a shrink mask if we want to make that a little bit smaller. And then we can also sharpen the mask as well. So sharpen mask. So that's too sharp. So let's see how we go with this. Let's go back to our dynamics and run the simulation. So mesh density is higher than this simulation points. So what we can do is increase this. Hopefully that'll be enough. So what we can do is just probably, maybe we can't do it that high. So let's bring this down a bit more. So let's go back to geometry. Maybe go down to 7. Delete higher. And then let's run that again. Okay, so you can see that drooping down. So that's good. What we need to do is probably sharpen the mask up a bit. So I might sharpen the mask. And then let's run that again. Okay, so you can see that mask is holding that shape now, which is good. Obviously, it's not looking great. So we don't really need to use gravity in here. If we're going to use gravity, we probably want to keep it quite low. But what I really want to do is turn gravity off and just play around with these sort of features here. So inflate would be good. If we just reduce the amount a little bit and then try to run the simulation, you can see it sort of puffs things out for us. It gives us a nice sort of, it feels full. We could blur the mask out a bit because I'm not too happy with how sharp that is. I might blur once and then run that inflate simulation again. So you can see how that looks. And this is just a way to sort of add a little bit more life into the object to make it look a little bit more fuller. And if you wanted to, you can spend a bit more time as well to make this mask a bit more accurate. Maybe I was being a bit too loose with it. You can come in here and spend a bit more time making that look a bit nicer. Think about the sort of grab points, tension points that would be on this wing. Okay, so something like that. So let's run that simulation again. So you can stop whenever you want. I think that looks pretty good. So it's a good starting point, I think. And then what we can do is then just use the move brush to move some of these things around so we can give it a bit of a shape. I like to do this with AccuCurve turned on. So if you go to brush and then you go to curve, AccuCurve is here. And it just gives you a more of a pinch type look. So you can sort of grab these points and have a bit more control over it. So I can use a larger brush here, sort of push these up like this. And then these guys I can push back down. So it might be a bit too harsh. So you could play around with how far you go with that AccuCurve. So you could turn it off for now, push that up, probably go a bit higher, like that. And then turn AccuCurve on to realign these guys back up to make it kind of look like it's like a tension point there. Bring that back onto the mesh. And I'll do the same over here as well. Okay, so give it a bit of shape. Make this go up and up here as well. and then use the AccuCurve function to pull that back down and give it a nice sort of pinch. You can also smooth the edges of this shape as well. So if it's a little bit edgy like here and it's not quite that nice, you can smooth that off. Now, smoothing by default smooths across 3 points, I think it's 3. So you'll probably find that on edges, it sort of doesn't really do anything. As you can sort of see here, as I brush over this edge, it doesn't seem to do anything. So what we need to do is hold, we don't need to hold anything, so we just need to go to, I think, brush. Yeah, brush, and all the way to the bottom, there's a smooth brush modifier. So 3 min contact points. So if we want to smooth just the edges, which will be just 1 contact point, because it's just 1 vertex there, we need to reduce this all the way to 1. We should be able to smooth this edge off if we hold down Shift. Be a little bit tricky because we need to get right in there. You can see we can smooth that point off. Let's see. Brush. Actually, you do have to hold down Shift whilst you do this. You can see if I hold down Shift, it changes. So you can see we can sort of smooth this edge off now, which is quite nice. Just wondering why it wasn't working. So what we can do is then smooth this edge like that to give us a nicer sort of smoother edge like this. I don't know why it's not on by default, because it's quite handy to have, but you do have to turn it on. And over here, like this. Okay, so these guys here are, it's not looking too great, so we can just use this smooth and just to blend that back in. Right. You can do a little bit of sculpting here as well to sort of blend that into that sort of shape that we simulated. So you can bring up your clay buildup. And for this, I'm just going to turn off the alpha, or replace the alpha with alpha 1. It'll be a nice soft alpha. And that way I can easily blend that shape in a little bit more. Hold down Alt, cut into some areas like this. Okay, so I don't like this part here, so I might just use a larger sort of brush to sort of smooth that down. It's not looking too great, so what I want to do is use a smooth brush, a stronger smooth brush. So if I go to the light box and then go to brushes and find smooth, there's a brush called Smooth Stronger. It's going to replace the Shift key. And it should give us a really strong, aggressive smooth, which will allow us to smooth these parts down a bit more, much more easier. Right. Okay. So this part here, if you don't like that, you should be able to smooth that out with this Smooth Stronger brush. And any other areas as well. Up here looks a bit nasty. Great. So Now with this, we can use, just like your standard brush and just sort of brush points like this, whatever you need to do. I'm just sort of thinking about like tension points in the wing, parts that where it's sort of pulling a bit against, like the sort of bones are pulling against it. I don't know how hard or soft you want your wings to be, but you could do stuff like this where you're just using the standard brush. I'm not using anything special here. Sort of just brush over. And that doesn't look too good. Maybe something like this. Probably want to grab some references at this point. Don't like how this sort of goes in a bit too far, so I might use the clay build up to fill that area out a little bit. Smooth it back to the standard brush. Okay, you sort of get the idea, right? Do all sorts of things, all sorts of patterns, whatever you sort of feel like. Cloth brushes might work pretty well at this stage as well, I think, depending on how much of like a drapey sort of look that you're going for. I think this should be fine, but I would probably go over some of the edges with like the clay build up, just like one side of it, just so it doesn't look so, what's the word? So fake looking. You just want to sort of blend that in a little bit. You can even smooth one side of it as well, so just like the top half. Okay. So something like that. It's probably a bit too samey over here. I think it's repeating a bit too much. But you'll spend the time to make it look the way that you want it to. Now that we have these wings, it needs to have some thickness. So right now it's just one-sided. So if I go to display properties and turn that off, you can see it's just this side, and this side is kind of nothing. So it needs to have some sort of thickness to it. To do that, it's the same way that we sort of give thickness to most things. We need to use the dynamic subdiv. It's not the only way to give thickness, but I think it's the best way, because it's sort of we can sort of see the thickness before we commit to it. So we can increase the thickness slider like that, and that looks pretty good actually in terms of thickness. And we can turn post subdiv off, and it gives us a sort of smoother edge. You can sort of see that we can increase the smoothness as well, and lower the subdivs, or increase the subdivs in this case. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Nothing's baked in yet, which is good. So we can look at it from distance to see if that's the sort of thickness that we want to go with. If we're happy with it, just press apply. Now before I press apply, I sort of want to align these guys up a bit better. I'm going to have AccuCurve turned on. I want to grab these and push them into position a bit nicer. It looked a little bit off. Same thing with over here. Just push that in a bit. Push that in a bit more. It'll be a bit laggier with the dynamic subdiv turned on, but we get to see the thickness as well. So we can see if we're accurately sort of pushing things into the surface. So that looks pretty good. Over here needs a little bit of work. Push that down a little bit, and we can push this up and down. Okay, so we need a lot of work up here. So just push that down. And last little bit here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. If we're happy with it, just press apply. Now, if you're going to do more detailing, which you probably should, just remember to have backface masking turned on. So that's in brushes, auto masking, and backface masking. So that setting is done per brush. If you don't have it on, if you were to do something on this side, you're most likely going to affect the other side as well, which is obviously not what we want. So if I turn auto masking on, so backface mask turned on, if I was to sculpt here, nothing's going to happen on this side. So that way I can do whatever I need to do on this side, and then I can do whatever I need to do on this side without it affecting the other side. Okay. So once you're happy with that, all you need to do is then go into, I have hotkeys for it down here, but it's, we need to mirror it over. So it's in geometry, modify topology, mirror. So we need to mirror it first. So we need to put it to that side because it works from this side to this side. So we need to mirror it first. I think it's in deformation. Yep, so mirror. So it's got subdiv levels, so let's just turn. We don't need the lowers, so delete lower. So deformation. I have buttons for it down here, so I do forget where it is sometimes in the menus. So mirror, and then geometry, modify topology, mirror and world. Now we have some wings. I didn't really do this part here, but you get the idea. So now you can work with symmetry turned on. You have some really cool wings.